Hello. Look at my eye wrinkles. All right, settled. Okay, so oh, shoot. um, there's like a lot of free stuff. Let's call this the Indomitable CK freeform of what we like to call it. Excuse me. What I like to call it talking to myself, which is not a depreciation form of trying to wreck anything that has been very spirited in this Christianity world, is the fact that I would call this me talking to Kelex, huh? I don't know, CK kind of thing kind of works. Seek him, seek him, seek him, CKIM, seek him. There's a difference there, and there's always a difference understanding what kind of pairs happen. Pairs of identity matching quality that makes rather rarefied air, or what is at your not disposal, but what can be appreciated, right? So like you have a lot of things, you have a lot of information at will to be nuanced. I was thinking that I was talking to the group chat, like just about integers and how that it could be maybe not a stressful situation, but when science and spirituality collide, you do know that colors in effect can protrude exactly how you feel. And that is recognized by the state of representation. And sometimes I like to be keying on those moments because it dignifies how much you can understand your identity. Um, I'm not saying any of this is chosen in a particular manner, but this crystal is, and this crystal really makes sense to me because, well, it's course clear quartz. It got some selenite crystals. I got a few other crystals. I got a lot of crystals. I got a lot of crystals, and they are all personal wealth. You know why they're personal wealth? They're all personal wealth because they are attributable to what I have inherently and responded with promptness of love. And that is something that I truly believe in. And so that could be quickly hastened by the idea that you want to move around and jump around and become a factor everywhere. But the X factor is you do have to know yourself, and that is the biggest one. And when you do know yourself, you do know that you're in guidance with a big team, because I think at this point, I am speaking under under the many perspectives of Jesus Christ. But sometimes, plainly and willfully speaking, while the days and nights are long and tedious, you do have to prolong how often you can resemble yourself to be matching to what you would like to respond to others for. Because I mean, sometimes if it is indicative of inside and inside more of how you know yourself, sometimes you feel like you're selfish, or sometimes you're looking into things too much, and that can be quite the auspicious moment. That in itself is something that I feel like you do have that time. You do have that timescape. That time is something that you can always find relativity in because quite thoroughly, things that are impossible have been being made possible. And so you do want to make sure that, if anything, you can be in matching reconnaissance. I mean, I think that's a very good value. I think it's a very good ideal. I think it's a very good uh, I think it's almost reaching the glory of God. And I don't say that it's something to be so easily distraught by a few words, but there are times of there are rather relevant moments where if you think that you yourself has chosen to believe in something and you want to constantly check yourself for it, I would tell you the first person that I know that does that the most is myself. And that's why I had to go through so many differences and so many checks and so many wayful ways of making sure that, hey, it's not a rainbow. it's not a rainbow that is disillusioned or is a rainbow that speaks for something that's totally out of sight. No, it's I have colors that goes beyond any sort of meaning that does cause division. But how so will you guys be able to protrude in a way that makes it relevant to whatever case that you want to be a part of? And that part is kind of seems like like everyone's got it going on. That's how I feel when things are going relevant. And in that shared space, I would say that there's very recognizable truths. And that thing is something where, I can't even say it myself in a 7, 8 billion population world. There's so many different people. So it comes down to quality, and sometimes randomness does take effect into quality. Sometimes meeting a random person, but the discrepancy of all of it currently, I would say that, sometimes having a keen eye and a discernment is something that is rather accentuating over time. Over time, you kind of realize that. But don't ever put yourself down because you feel like you made those mistakes. I did the same thing, and sometimes you just really have to realize that you make mistakes, and then you build that character. A friendship and an advisor is different, but a friendship and advisor can always be the same. They can always have something that makes sense. Regardless, let's move on from that. A free form thought. I mean, I like to speak about a lot of things, but I think what is most relevant in many cases is to make sure that you do know what you are talking about. No, not necessarily. I think sometimes when you do have free talk and you're living in an information world, sometimes you can understand that everything isn't so fabricated and everything isn't so decisive, and it's always a mature sense to know that always you do have a manifold within a manifold and within a manifold, but you wouldn't know how to describe that. Sometimes being able to describe something with the team is much easier. So that's why I think when you speak to a person and they may not have it all together, I wouldn't downgrade that person. I would just say that things are more relevant when you have a point to make. When you do have when you think that something isn't right and you want to really make it a part of what is being considered. And all the time that I have always looked at what I'm looking forward to that find that I find myself almost combining with or having that sense of representation garnered to me, perhaps through me, perhaps onto me. But it's always trying to look upward, and those choices that I make actually do make a pretty clear sense in the information age. So a lot of action, willing, and things of that nature that people have continually done in forms of greatness that I mean, I always looked up to, and it's not a look up to in an idle sense. It's how are they doing this? Why are they doing this? What are they doing? Um, and so forth. But it's more so just a take on a new understanding of what is from the ancient times. It's like I think biblical manners had very highest of highest civilizations, and perhaps one of the things, the reason why history doesn't tell us the reason why is because yes, man has colluded to the point of, excuse me, not colluded, but man has done what they've done to survive. But that preservation is not a survive. It's a preservation of you know, kind of digressing. And in that sense, that is what history looks like if you're not reading into it too well. But if you're reading into it really well, then you do have a sense of firm understanding of what could be done and what is true and what is really possible. I almost say that things aren't possible. Um, I almost say that like it gets kind of difficult with possibilities just because you always do not need a strong foundation, and just because you always do need to know what are human limitations and what are God-given strengths and abilities and gifts and grace. So it's like from there on that separation is something that I don't want you to ever get too cocky about. Don't ever get too much of anything. But that is just a start, and once you get past that, then like all these characters, man, it's just simple living. And what happens beyond that, actually, excuse me, not simple living, but I think it's engross realization that yeah, you do have like that drive and that kind of shining moment because of the fact that like maybe I'm speaking into like how that goes about it, but I do think it's rather fresh when when possibilities do agree with one another, and those possibilities, it shouldn't really close out. It really shouldn't close each other out. But I do think, yeah, it's tough to know that sleep is both one that we find to be rather rather difficult because I think I'm looking at different life stages. I think I'm looking at how much one person um, can achieve when more so it's about what quality of life that is and how much somebody shares that. I think is really also very vying. I think that one is super cool too because when you could share, it means that you're confident. Sharing how though is probably one of the most determinant factors of whether people will look at you. Don't ever feel like you're judged. And I don't think there's this judged part. I mean, I think when I look at myself, sometimes I look at myself with disdain, but it's only because I know that I do have a personal respect for me in what I have, spirited wise. There's a lot of things you could do to boost your confidence, but does it start from there and does it go on to be something rather courageous, or do you find that you're living in a space where it's just constant, which is no issue, and that constance is something that I think has always wanted to be is always wanted to be in the right space. You know what? That one is just. I think that's just good. I think that's really good, and I think that's how it should be playing out sometimes. And just talking about how much I talk about what is possible. I think that's the reason why I talk to myself so much. Or that's why Kelex did so much, is because it's not that what would be judged. It's the fact that once you've done certain things that are super, what you think is super improbable, and then you expect people to maybe believe you because everyone's on the same page, and then it's not. You tend to also alienate yourself because you're not. I tend to I tended to because it wasn't you know it's no one's fault still possibly. But with all that being said, I know that when I quickly go about things, it's not the best sometimes as well. So just trying to make sure that I have stock in what is appropriate. Um, that's what my father actually likes to tell me. And that stuff actually has recognizable patterns. And that in itself is quite fun too. Like, it's just kicking it sometimes, but it's sometimes more rather you got a lot of friends that really know how to get down and they're doing the right thing. They're handling their business. They're really into it. They're like, they're really just got character. Got a lot of character. And it's like, you know, I think appreciation at that stance is by far the greatest quality too. I know that there's different roles involved when it comes to like, let's say a team, a godly team. Like, it's easy to compare, like sports and like who's the best because obviously you want God to be the best. And if you want God to be the best, you gotta look for something, right? And it's like I don't know. Sometimes as a fan and as once as a player, like fan player kind of thing, like I would say that there is a lot of like good weight out there. But like I feel like I do feel like it's really really about that when you look at the glory of God, when you look at the meekness of God and how we want to contribute to a given society. I think, yeah, I think um, there's always a like a finite response that makes people go. But being able to be comfortable in a situation and being able to be reputable in a situation and being able to be what is true to nature, not true to nature, but true to God, is like there's almost a similarity effect. And how do you respond to groupings, and how do you respond to individual response, and that goes by kind of quick, but I think uh, it becomes rather healthy, and when it becomes healthier, because yeah, the individual part is like mess up a little bit here and there, and it's like okay, now it becomes healthier and healthier. Um, I think I think that's the beauty of it. I think that's the beauty of life. I think that's it. But speaking of it, geez, it's not, to me. It's not even philosophical sometimes. It's like this starts to add up in a way that makes it way more mature, and yet still childlike innocence, childlike substance that doesn't remark anything really. It doesn't really doesn't have qualities that that are like um, a little on off, and then off again, and then just tethered. I don't know. I don't look at that, but sometimes what is appropriate is like all, all the time people are going through things. All the time people are going through things. Um, what you want to involve yourself in? What do you want to involve yourself in? Like that's the one that I like. Feel like I should always have a freedom of choice for. Um, and I think taking taking my time with uh certain perspectives is always a good thing. Always a good thing. Um, being in a not in a confined space and not in a pressure ticker, but uh, making sure that all the combined efforts, of your mental space, because the brain is. I always like to say that the brain is like the beauty of God's creation. Uh, well, obviously, but like really something to look into, because there's a lot of things human beings haven't really been able to research, because it's like it's like the synapses is not almost science worthy. No, that's not the case. Sometimes coming up with things in the very moment is rather different from spirit and science. Um, and sometimes in that way, being able to understand how recognized you are in a certain aspect, does make you more structured. Makes you more. Um, it helps you. It helps you rather than it deters you, and I think that helps too. Like, like I have, um, I have like really good responses based off my imagination, and like I have works of fiction that I can, um, look upwards many of times. It's become truer and truer, depending on how I feel, and that one is really difficult too, because what say you if like it happens so regularly for oneself that it becomes normal, and that normalcy doesn't have to uh, doesn't have to be really relevant to anyone else that's really watching, kind of thing. That I don't think sometimes it makes sense, but yeah, I think all the time there's a God-given space that actually groups you into, not so much of like billions of people, millions of people, but I'm just saying that, what happens when there are there's finite individuals that have an ability to speak to millions of people, right? Like and Perhaps that's a grandeur. Perhaps that's a arena fill space or movie fill space. Perhaps that's it's the breakdown of science, you know, just it's theater, you know, but sometimes was being told is because of the fact that it's been so insightful, and it's been so uh, worthy. It's been so like, oh man, like I know what you're talking about. I don't know if you get get to that point, and then you get to that point, and it's like, oh my gosh, like we did it now. But like, you know, sometimes uh humanistic response um doesn't have to be so no, stop there. If I were to speak with a lot of joy and a lot of faith with Kelex, with what is kind of like a upbringing upbringing of what you would want for good things to work, even in the spaces you wouldn't find for good things to work. Um, but you don't know it yet. Like you don't know it, and that upbringing, uh, to be able to see the results, yeah, to be able to see the results, and to be able to live in the prize kind of thing, like how well this had all happened. As long as you're not complaining and as long as you're not bitter about life, like I am I'm so sure, like, you know, that Jesus Christ is, yeah, let's put it that way. I'm so sure that Jesus Christ has come down to earth. Like, maybe, actually, how should maybe when I was in high school, I used to question him a lot, you know, like, I don't know, my belief factor is there. It's in there. It's like not in there. Like, I know who I am. I got this, you know, I know who I am. But it's like the belief factor. It was so much stronger. Um, in many different avenues. I would say that character verse is a really good one. But sorry for the tongue thing. But it's like, dang man, like what what else, you know, what else was it if it wasn't, you know, somebody, because like why I'm a little bit um not weary about or anything is like I look at a whole bunch of people and it's like I would want to be able to tell you certain things too, like the salt kind of thing, like, you know, but if you don't have what you if you don't have the actual food, like how can you actually, like, you know, explain how good that, you know, pot that pink sauce pasta is. Like you wouldn't really be able to actually you put salt on that, but you don't put salt on that. Like you put salt on fish, right? And so like that pokey, you know, like that stuff that tastes so good. Like how do you make it more remarkable, make it more, make it more even handsome and delivered. Because I do think my God is so attractive, like that, like, you know, it almost becomes like a best friend thing. But like obviously, like that's something that you people really have to understand too. And it's like, like how are you gonna go about that? And you know, sometimes you gotta be strong, and you gotta have a fit about you. And then I'm gonna talk about some crazy angry fit, but like a fit, like, you know, like you just you just know your role, and you know your reconnaissance, and you know the community you're within, and you know that people are popping all over the place, and you know that you got a good relationship here and there. You know you love and respect your parents. You know that things are just popping here and there again. So it's like all of a sudden you just want to do what you need to do because you have that right a moment. Your right a moment. What is that right a moment? I think about that all the time. That's why I'm writing. That's why I'm putting that W up in front. Because if you don't put that W up in front, we're not in this life to lose. Not to per se say like, we all probably like, I don't even want to say it, but yeah, that's it. Don't worry about it. But like, it's like, you win some, and you find that in that, like, can't, you it's like, just it's fun. It's good. It's joyous,ome. Like, it's like joyful. Like, it's like, what can what what can't you do sometimes is like, obviously, like, you know your limitations. Like, when people tell you like certain things, it's like, you shouldn't go that way, kind of thing. Like, yeah, it's like that. And it's you yeah, and you start to think about instinct. Well, I start to think about instinct, and like, what I really should be talking to in my space, my class space, and stuff like that. And man, countless times I told myself like, I've never been this mentally strong. And you have to go through the cycle. Well, no, I don't want to say it's up and down either, but I would say is healthy living is healthy living. It's very healthy living to know that I'm glad it's kind of difficult to define. And there have been other moments where I feel like all I want to do is define that special feeling. I know that with my heritage, my dad, like, he kind of slow rolled out it for me too. Like, take your time, understand, like, you don't have to describe everything. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of ways you can be, to be in, and sometimes even if you're just at work galanting, like, it's that one I feel like is going to be super important in my life. I just don't know that. But regardless, Kelex is talking about tech, right? And tech and materials, something I seriously want to get into. But having senses is something that I feel like is one that is so good to me. Like senses, you got five senses. You may have six senses. You may have seven senses. I don't want to take you any further. But the thing is, sometimes, you just want to do things out of the ordinary. You want to be something so far great. Man, if you got that, do that, and don't ever limit yourself. Things are quite limitless. You know what I mean? Like, just it's like a really consistent um, process if you can consider the right things. So yeah, choice is really good. Choice is really good. Gotta make your right choices, and be level headed. Definitely be stable about it. Productivity is serious too. Working smart gets even better. Um, Working smart in a full master plan that will get you impossibles. Um, Uh, Thinking that you're not good looking is probably the worst thing you should do to yourself. Uh, I always like to transition out of that with confidence. Not always, but it's a good one. It's definitely a good one. Um, Sometimes being able to talk like this and then not being able to talk outside, um, I think that does prove a sort of disheartening factor. But I think perhaps in my uniqueness, perhaps in my specialness, I'm well aware of what is fully going on. I'm well aware of what is really uh, considered to be truth. Um, that takes some time as well. Being able to like really live out what is good. Because also a lot of people try to get too specific, um, and also try to get too um, nitpicky, um, and, and and that calls for perhaps in relationship, like, serious woman man relationships. But sometimes, obviously surface level things do tend to happen, where sometimes making a stringent judgment on a fallacy is probably the worst thing you could do. And then I think yeah, so don't judge. Obviously, don't judge. Not judging is what can get you a lot of appreciation. I'll tell you that by a fact. If you don't judge, whew, things open up for you. Um, if you if you do have power resentment because of how the things are being handled out in the world, um, know that you can make a difference. Honestly, like sometimes I I think people think that's like uh I think people think that's like a what is it called? I freaking that's corny. What? I think people think that that people say that too much, but it's not. You can really make a difference. Like if you really set your mind to it, all your body, all your soul, all your mind. Like if you really put your heart in God, and like really, really want to like be a part of something for real, yeah, like you can really move mountains. And like I'm not just saying that, man, like man, woman, like you can really move mountains if you choose to. If you choose to. And sometimes I would think that a lot of um, decisions that you make uh, are are hold on, where am I going with this? Sometimes I think decisions are distributable by the conscientious form that sometimes you may or may not know through the visible and invisible spectrum, but you do have what you do um, want and need, and then you have a liking towards the things like I was saying before, and so that could lead you to the right choice, right? And that when that leads you, a guidance factor is always contributable to what you want to be more fond of. And I mean, hey, that's always been a great thing. That's always been an amazing thing. Like wanting to be a part of something, perhaps in a way that with a gentle heart, is probably like a, a production that can not bring you nuances, but that can bring you um, toward a light that that's not just aliens and cowboys. It's a real light. Like it's a light that makes you, yeah, like these things. Like it's real light, and um, taking your time, making sure that you have your right identity. Um, that's gonna really make difference. And like I said about the bouncing thing and the multiplicity of oneself, I think that's one thing that I really had to deal with, and I really had to kind of falter in sometimes because uh, it's it's not a difficult choice. Like it's not a difficult thing to always want to like be like, ah, this is an integer because I'm a machine. Like beyond Victor, I don't think I don't think analytical processes are going to be the light of effect. I do think analytical processes is uh, quite the Kelex thing, and it's just like it works. It's a derivative of everything, but math won't solve everything. If math could solve everything, then our projections are always right. Um, but it's not. Our projections are actually. I would like to say that sometimes it is in the combination of understanding that projections are your standard, but pushing yourself beyond those standards is the one that I hope to protrude that that you should be a part of. That can always be, that can always be like, but like sometimes just knowing that your body or your spirit or your mental can go beyond, like that communication, I think, is always necessary. And that breakdown is something that I feel like, has always been there. And so that's why I say choice is important, because it's almost the same route, but you do want to have this is what I'm looking at too, is like you do want to have good avenues and good doors that can lead you to the right way, and man, it's not a difficult thing. It should be kind of rather simple. And to me, I did it on an unorthodox way through my social life, which I did get freaking ambitious, and I did get freaking I got freaky ambitious because the green of the world is what is the green of the world. Eventually led me to the nature space. The nature space is where I truly believe um, is, blue, green, white, like from the surface level of the planet. But you do have, you do have yellow lilies, and you do have like uh, red, you do have like a lot of flowers and different colors and brown wood and stuff like that. Like, what is going to get you abound to how well those colors can be recognized. Sometimes I think this part is like a little iffy, but I think I think it makes sense sometimes, just because like I'll be out there and I'll just be listening, and a lot of times it could look like wasted space, and a lot of times it may have kind of been, but I do think if you don't lose your essence, if you don't lose your spirit, then you kind of understand, like, yeah, that choice becomes easier and easier and easier. Like, then what you're looking at becomes, are you trying to improve something? I think you're trying to improve something always, but to me, that's a pressure cooker. Like, that's like constant improvement. Like, it's gonna tick some way somehow, right? But if it's um if it's coming from a good space, which, don't get me wrong, with the proof, like improvement, that stuff, home improvement's always good. But if you're coming from a good space, like, woo, man, like, I don't know, sometimes the light up is so much more realer than proficiency, you know? And then that's where I see guys like perform really well. It's like, man, I've been seeing it. It's a whole new wave of like, I've been feeling it too. It's like a whole new wave of like building upon each other. You know what I mean? Like that's something that I heavily equate to. I seriously heavily equate in that way, because man, it's sometimes, society has it that they tell you you can't stop. You can't stop. But why? Which way? You know? Like, that's a big why. It's like, which way are you gonna go about not stopping? Because if you work smart, you know, you could save yourself quite literally thousands of hours, as opposed to, doing the same thing over and over again. Whereas the human grandness, because of all of our sin, perhaps, is that we need to repeat things over and over to be able to be really good at it. So that one is also a separation that I think people really need to key on. You should be able to do both, I think, and you should be able to understand that master plan is serious. It's serious, but the reason why I felt like I had a Kelex so much is because I didn't know if my simple repetition was gonna be still wise and still, you know what I mean? And so I wanted you to understand, like, there's so many things like I could have, um, you know, performed in, that made things more matchable, more relatable. And the could have isn't something that I feel like you should still be restricted from. The constantly churning out things of that nature. I used to fear that sometimes. Like, I have all this information, and like, oh man, like, what can I have all this information, like, what can I do with it? yeah, that is with there's a plan within a plan, I think, but like how 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 able are you to do it while people are around you and things of that nature that are looking towards you and things of that nature? I think that one does actually it's almost like the sun. You know what I mean? It's almost like it's almost like the yeah, it's almost like the sun and its waves or and its rays. Waves, rays, same thing. Um I think that's what the sun can be defined, maybe defined as is like, you know, it's always up there and it's always going to be there and it knows that. How are you going to, but like, I don't know. Sometimes I think what, uh, yeah, sometimes it's just like, huh, and sometimes, it's like, dang, like, yeah, going back to like all the things that humans not humans, but like all the things that I like to like, respond well with is like, if you ever heard the saying game recognized game, like that could be just like culture and swag, but like, there I could say the same thing for people that are like helping, the really dire people in need. Like, but appropriation is definitely key too. How are you going to be appropriate for a whole bunch of people? I don't know if that's your responsibility, but that's something that I look at sometimes. Sometimes um, I think the grouping and the individual is one that gets difficult. So have a good team with you, man. Have a good team. Know who's your team, and just like everything else, what everyone else says, like having good people around you is what really matters. I love to have it where I can speak to people very easily in different kinds of ways. You know, I love that, the days are by seven. And yeah, and like it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. All right, I think this is the part where I kind of feel like nah. Sometimes, yeah, there's just a lot, but I'll stop right here. Peace. Peace.